car makers and their dealers behave badly. On this, there can be no doubt. But to be fair, it's not all of them, and not all of the time. There's probably only a sinister clutch of 15% of them striving for gold in the anti-consumer arsehole Olympics. But when they do, and they do strive pretty hard from time to time, I have to say, when they do, it tarnishes the whole breed, it brings the whole industry down, and it motivates people such as me to channel and resurrect their automotive antichrist in an effort to turn particularly egregious breaches upside down. And I suppose that's therapeutic and entertaining to watch, and it's also an example of using journalism as a vector for good as opposed to evil. But you know what else is just as bad? And I thought we'd cover that today. It's the way some car owners carry on. Last week, I brought you the story of that pornographic movie actor or office manager, I always get them mixed up, named Jay Wood for the purpose of the story. Now, Jay Wood had an Isuzu D-Max under warranty, the turbo of which took a giant steaming dump in its engine bay, and the local dealer invited him to jam his warranty claim where the Pope doesn't wash, at least not too enthusiastically or too frequently, you know. And then the Antichrist got himself resurrected and gave a traditional 666 flavoured reach around to the chaps at Isuzu and invited them to rethink their direction on this one, and they decided in their wisdom to turn that from a no-can-do to a yeah, we'll fix it for free, dude. Almost as if that's some kind of legislated obligation. Go figure. It shouldn't come to that, but you know, we got a decent result. And I guess at the end of the day, in the domain of good things and bad things, that's a good thing. However, no good deed goes unpunished. And every time, dude, every time I do one of these reports, the floodgates open and my inbox fills up, effectively transporting me straight through immigration control and deep into the nutbag city limits. This report is sponsored by NordVPN. Get a mega discount plus 4 extra months for free right now with my exclusive deal. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC now. Online security threats are everywhere, but you don't have to be the next victim. That's where NordVPN comes in, locking everything down securely in the background. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC now. Every 2-year plan receives that huge discount plus 4 extra months of Nord for free. nordvpn.com/AEJC. Using NordVPN is easy. Just subscribe, download the app and connect. One click later, your IP address is shielded and your traffic is encrypted across as many as 6 of your devices. Nord is the fastest VPN on the planet. It costs only about as much as a single cup of coffee every month to keep your data, your identity and your devices secure. Masking your location means you'll be able to access content and resources that might be blocked where you live. Plus, you can continue to watch your favourite content when you travel. Boost your online security at nordvpn.com/AEJC. Get that mega discount and enjoy those 4 extra months for free. It's all totally risk-free with Nord's rock-solid 30-day money-back guarantee. It's easy to stay safe online. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC now. As much as I hate it, and I really do hate it when car makers behave badly, or their dealers, and they throw consumers with legitimate claims deeply and unforgivingly under the bus, and they only do it to make money or improve the bottom line. As much as I hate that, I sure as shit hate it when the boot is on the other foot and consumers do exactly the same thing by virtue of their ignorance or their misrepresentations or their lies of omission, etc. Okay. And that's what I want to talk about today. Like, I get emails all the time and they go like, oh, John, can you help me, mate? Me engine just blew up on the freeway and I could have been killed, but I got the car back to the dealer on a flatbed and they're not helping me. They're denying my warranty claim. And then when I rung head office, they threw me under the bus too. Help me, mate. Help me. Like this. So I get the details like the rego and the VIN code and the name of the dealer, and I make representations to particular people I know in executive positions at particular car makers, and I go, hey, do you want to have another look at this perhaps? As that's after I've done the triage and I think potentially this dude might have a point, kind of thing. And there's a complex relationship, I have to say, between journalists and executives in car companies. And the ones that you've known for a long time that you rate, who you trust, they've got to trust you and you've got to trust them. And it's counterproductive, therefore, for either of you to be caught just once bullshitting. Know what I mean? And so most of the people I would reach out to are smart enough not to bullshit me. And quite often I'll get a call and it'll go like, mate, you know that guy you sent me a couple of days ago? Well, I've looked into that and he hasn't had his car serviced for 4 fucking years. And that might have something to do with why his engine just blew up on the freeway, kind of thing. So that's quite common. It's more common than you think. It's really a mistake to think that consumers are always right. Like the customer is absolutely not always right when this kind of thing happens. And having said that, there are some people with legitimate warranty claims and they're going under the bus and that needs to be redressed, okay? Absolutely has to be redressed. But as to these other peanuts who haven't got a clue about how cars work or just lie by omission or just flat out lie to you about the nature of the problem, I really wish there was a volume control and you could just attenuate the crap out of them. Like, I used to meet car owners face to face out in the wild, right? And there was a straw camel's back breaking incident there, which I should tell you about as well. A dude whom I won't name because A, I don't remember it, and B, I don't want him to sue me, with a carnival. I think it was a carnival anyway, but it was some big bus. And he made this email approach to me to the effect of, oh, my carnival, it pulls so hard to the left, I'm terrified to drive it on the freeway anymore. If I try, the effort of just keeping the car straight burns out my forearms and leaves me a cripple after just minutes, kind of thing, right? And I'm thinking to myself, I've never driven a car that does that. And the only thing I could imagine that would make a car pull that hard to the left is some sort of major impact damage, like a dirty big pothole, pulling the steering alignment, like the wheel alignment, way out of whack kind of thing might just do that, But the tyres would be scrubbing the shit out of themselves and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I agreed to meet this chap at an undisclosed location and I got in the car and drove it. And you know what? It was just like every other fucking carnival I'd ever driven. This was all just a thought bubble, like a brain fart. It didn't exist. I was trying to solve a problem that didn't exist. All cars in Australia pull to the left slightly. They're designed that way because we drive on the left. And if you fall asleep, it's better if your car pulls to the left because then it'll pull the car over into the scenery, right? As opposed to into the oncoming traffic, which would end even worse. Pro tip, it's not a good idea to fall asleep and the car to go off the road in any direction. Best avoided. This problem, best avoided. But if it does, if there's the lesser of two evils, the lesser is to pull slightly to the left because it's less likely to damage, to be as bad on the balance of probabilities kind of thing. And the other thing, of course, is that there's a crown in the center of the road and we're always driving on the left-hand side of the crown, which means we're trying to creep down the hill a little bit too. And sometimes the design-in left pull plus the crown combine to pull the car slightly to the left, but all cars are this way and it's a designed-in feature, okay? It's not a defect. And to me, at least, it was nothing like as bad as the description I'd been given, and it was just like every other example of that breed that I had ever frickin' well driven. Okay, so that's when I stopped intervening face-to-face with consumers, because who's got time? And you do start to wonder about whether or not they've got their murder kit in the back. So anyway, following Jay Wood's incident last week where that frown went upside down, my inbox, and this was not unanticipated, it just overflowed with people having all kinds of problems. And the next one I want to bring to you now is the trivial problem, the it doesn't matter problem. Okay, I get this all the time too. These are generally people with too much spare time who just obsess about, they need some drama in their life and this non-issue is it kind of thing. So I'm not going to name this chap either. Because I don't want to humiliate him publicly or get sued for defamation. So, but mainly humiliate him publicly. I've got no intention of doing that. I just want to talk about this issue of obsession over things that don't matter. Okay, so Neville No Name reaches out to me and he goes, "Oh, John, my Suzu D-Max under new car warranty has a leaking diff/sweating. And under new car warranty, I've been told by Suzu Australia it will not be fixed as it's not dripping, ? Have you heard of this?" Now, I'm mindful that there's really only one question here. And I was so sorely tempted to write back to him and say, "No, sincerely, me," kind of thing. But have a look at it, dude. Like, this is the photo he sent me of this problem, and he thinks this is worthy of me getting involved kind of thing. I'd suggest look at it, dude. Like, if this is the front line for the battle of consumer law compliance in Australia, then it's high time we had a freaking ceasefire. I doubt that there's two little tiny drops of oil just soaking up the random dust on the diff here. I'd be surprised if it was an eighth of a cubic frickin' centimetre. Like, come on. It's clearly just leaking past the RTV bead that they put between the carrier and the housing on the differential when they assemble it at the factory, right? It's a tiny little leak. Gravity and osmosis and the ability of oil to find its way through the slightest crevice are just militating here to lose fuck all oil every day through this microscopic defect in the rear differential, right? Like, the diff's not pressurized. It's got breathers. It can't therefore be pressurized and pump oil out past the seals or any other defect like this, right? So this is completely inconsequential, this problem. So I responded, quote, "It's operationally insignificant, mate. Just monitor it once a fortnight, kind of see what happens," okay? I wanted to add, and what makes you think, A, I give a shit about these problems of this nature, or B, think that it was such a massive consumer injustice that the dealership and or I need to get ourselves involved in this? Like, why resurrect the Antichrist for a second time in an otherwise perfectly pleasant September? If, like, he doesn't need to come out if he's not needed, you know, he's better off sort of down there kind of thing. And I did also think, would you mind if we all just started sending you a bill for the time that you've detained us kind of thing? Like, look at it, dude. And I stress in the strongest possible terms, right, that the correct thing to do here, the prudent course of action when you are faced with exactly this kind of problem. Like, you can obsess about it by all means, and you can inflict this injustice on all and sundry. Anybody who'll listen, I suppose, you can inflict it upon them. But the prudent thing to do, the thing that's going to give you the best overall result, is to just detain yourself a little bit more thinking about chicks in bikinis. But oh no, of course, Nev No Name got back to me, okay? He goes, "Oh, John, I did. Then it went to," meaning he did just monitor it. And he got back to me like later that day or the next day or something. It hadn't been a month of monitoring. He goes, "I did. Then it just went to this a month later. I guess I just keep it topped up." And he sent me that photo. No, dude, I don't know either. Why didn't he send me the photo of the diff in its current state of leaky defectiveness kind of thing, where there must be a quarter of a cc of diff oil leaked out by now, losing a quarter of a cc a month. Imagine that. I think, why wait to send me this photo? I don't know. It's one of life's freaking mysteries, isn't it? A quarter of a cc of gear oil in a month. Like, come on, dude. This is in a diff. I looked it up. It holds 2.2 litres of diff oil. And so if it's going to lose a quarter of a cc a month, it's going to be bone dry in multiplied by 4. It's like 7 centuries. It's probably going to be dangerously low in 200 or 300 years and then bone dry in 7 centuries. Imagine that. Luckily, this is not going to be an issue for Neville No Name, though, is it? Because A, if you just monitor it like I freaking advised, and B, just change the diff oil. Like, Isuzu, I don't think, has a diff oil changeover interval for the D-Max, but 3 or 4 years is not bad for vehicles driven normally. I mean, obviously, if you do lots of slogging it out through the mud or deep river crossings or things of that nature, lots of gunshot on the way to Cape York or, whatever, then you probably want to do a diff oil change front and rear after every big trip. But for vehicles that don't get subjected to this extreme kind of operation, then 3 years, 4 years, it's going to be fine, dude. And you won't be able to measure the difference in the level from when they filled it up at the factory to 3 years down the track, not at the current rate. And if you monitor it, then if it gets worse, you'll know. And as to this, I guess I'll just keep it topped up. When I say that out loud, that's about as passive-aggressive as ex-wife number 5, the little sister of ex-wife number 3. I mean, she was wildly manipulative, that woman. Not always in a bad way, but, talk about, say stuff like that to get what they want. I guess I'll just keep it topped up then. I can see her saying that. Just park it in the same spot, Neville No Name, and see if there's a little pool of oil starting to form under where the diff would otherwise be when you move the car. And if that doesn't happen, then just go back in time and think more about chicks in bikinis, because that's the solution here. Now, this may never happen, of course. Not the thinking about chicks. Obviously you will, but the little pool of oil on the ground, we might never get that far because there's no mechanism that will make this worse, because not under pressure, no moving parts, all of the above kind of thing. It could just remain like that forever and be operationally insignificant for the life of the vehicle. But if you did want to attack it because you're a bit OCD and you've got too much freaking spare time, imagine that, people not reaching out to you all the time with their insignificant problems, then if you did want to tackle it, you could back all the bolts off half a turn that hold the carrier onto the housing. Just half a turn will be enough. And then retorque the whole assembly, because that might just be enough. You might want to put a spanner on all of those bolts first and just see that one of them's not particularly loose, okay? And if they're not all loose, you could back them all off about half a turn. And that's just enough so that you can get a torque wrench back in there and retorque them. And that might be enough just to nudge the RTV into a better seal, okay? So I can't tell just by looking at them, and they don't have markings on them that give the game away, at least not the bolts that I could see when I blew up those photographs. But they're either M12 or M10 bolts, right? Because Japan. And there's no reason for them to be fine sort of bolts because it's not that kind of assembly. They can just probably M12 course or M10 course. So by 1.5 in the case of M10 or by 1.75 in the case of M12. And the torque spec for them, if they're, let's ballpark it at class 10.9, that's about 60 Newton meters for M10 and about 110 Newton meters for M12, I'd suggest. And the reason you can afford to be kind of just in the ballpark with this is torquing bolts of this nature up is not an exact science. It's just not. Most of the effort is consumed with friction, and what's left over actually stretches the bolt. And you don't need that much force in the bolts just to hold the assembly in place. If you torque M10 by 1.5 up to about 60 Newton meters, there's going to be about 3 tons in each one of them, 3 tons of tension in the bolt, ballpark. And if you do M12, it's going to be about 4 tons of tension in each fastener. Okay, so times, let's say, 10 fasteners, that's 30 or 40 tons of clamping assembly force. So more than enough to get the job done, and in the ballpark is fine. And do them up lightly oiled, because that's where the torque spec is generally made up. Dry would be a higher torque, lightly oiled a little bit lower, I'd suggest. So let's think about that. There's no point in putting a torque wrench on a fastener that's been tightened up already. That doesn't tell you anything because of the static friction under the head. The torque setting for the bolt has already been achieved, and the static friction means that you're not going to be telling yourself anything. It's just going to go click and do nothing, basically. If you do want to retorque those carrier bolts, I would do it in 3 stages. The first stage, I'd go around at about half the maximum assembly torque. The second stage, I'd go at about 3/4. And the final stage, I'd go at the full assembly torque. So in the case of M10, the full assembly torque's about 60. So we'd be looking at 30, 45, and then 60. And in the case of M12, the full assembly torque is about 110. So I'd be going 50 and then 80 and then 110. And I'd do it in a crisscross star sort of pattern. So the way you're looking at it, I'd go 12 o'clock first, and then 6 o'clock, and then 1 o'clock, and then 7 o'clock, and 2 o'clock, and 8 o'clock, and 3 o'clock, and 9 o'clock, and 4 o'clock, and 10 o'clock, and 5 o'clock, and 11 o'clock, and then I'd up the torque wrench and go again. And then when I get to the final assembly torque, I'd go around a second lap just to make sure that you hadn't forgotten one, because the human race, dude, Homo sapiens always invents a better idiot in any scenario, and going around for the second lap is just a test that you haven't evolved into a better idiot in that situation. Now, I stress that this is absolutely not necessary to do, and it might not work, but if you wanted to feel as if you were taking action, you could do that if you had the skills. And if you don't have the skills, you could take it to any mechanic and say, hey, I've got this little insignificant leak here. Do you think you could just retorque the diff carrier bolts for me? And they would do that, and you'd have to pay them for that, but then you might be happy. But I'd suggest you're probably the kind of person who's not happy unless he's a little bit cranky or a little bit concerned about a problem with his vehicle, kind of thing. A more ghetto engineering fix for this is, because this oil is not under pressure, you could just spray the offending bit of the diff housing with a copious amount of degreaser, and then scrub it with a stiff brush, and then wipe it off with a rag and do the whole process again and get it really, really clean and really, really oil-free, and then just get the high-tech miracle of the digital spatula and smear on a little bead of RTV in the region where the leak is taking place. And because the inside of the guts of the diff is not under pressure, you're just trying to put a little barrier in place to stop gravity and osmosis from doing its thing. Now, the final, I would do nothing. Do nothing and think about chicks in bikinis is absolutely the way to go here at this point, if you ask me. But in closing, let's talk about this kind of thing more broadly, right? Because there is a class of dude who owns a vehicle and they get under it and they obsess about all kinds of shit that doesn't matter, okay? And I'd suggest that warranty status irrespective, the manufacturer and the dealer are not required to keep your car as new for the duration of the warranty. That's ridiculous. Like, it's a fundamentally ridiculous concept. At the highest level, it's ridiculous because of a little thing that's written into the source code of the universe called the second law of thermodynamics. And there's a whole bunch of ways of expressing that. It involves a property called entropy. And, if you wanted to be somewhat ghetto kind of brainiac about that, you could say that the second law of thermodynamics says that in a closed system, i.e. one which does not allow work or energy or matter to go across the boundary of the system, the amount of available energy diminishes in the time domain, okay? And you think, but what the fuck does that mean? It means entropy increases in the time domain. You might have heard that word and you don't know anything about it. It really just means that everything is a clock, right? Everything. If you're older than 30, you will know this because your face is a clock. You get up every morning and you inflict your face on the mirror and you do a little bit of calculus about it. You can tell it's a clock because it tells you the time when you look at your face every morning. It's always fucking later. Right? That's the second law of thermodynamics. It happens to your car. It means that when your car is just sitting there tomorrow, the tyres are more worn out than they were today, and the brakes are more worn out, and the plastics are more damaged by ultraviolet radiation, and the paint ditto, and the cylinder bores are slightly more glazed, and all the bearings are slightly more worn out, and the oil's got slightly worse contaminants in it, and the whole car is a clock, and every day it's telling you it's later. And it's not just your face and the car, it's everything. That's why you have to spend so much time in your fat cave stopping surfaces from rusting and things of this nature. And don't shoot the messenger, okay? Take it up with God because she wrote the code. God. Greatest of all deities, simply because it's our deity, right? Kind of thing. But if you write the second law of thermodynamics into the source code of the universe, this is what happens, okay? So your car can't be as new. There's no reason to have it as new. And these kinds of minor, I hesitate to call them defects because they're not really defects. Your car's got all kinds of fluids in all kinds of pipes and all kinds of reservoirs. And as long as they are reasonably contained, there is no defect. But to expect that there will be 100% integrity of all of those retention systems for 5 years is freaking ridiculous and unreasonable, and it smacks of too much spare time and somebody who thinks that his minor problems are the kinds of things that the rest of the universe is just gagging to find out about and deal with. And this is absolutely not the case. Okay. Interesting factoid before I let you go. If you're interested in this stuff, and they do make it really boring when you learn about things like thermodynamics at school and university, but it's actually really interesting stuff. It just needs to be explained in an interesting way. The late Stephen Hawking, in his book, A Brief History of Time, suggests that entropy might be the thing, like the second law of thermodynamics might be the thing that imprints the arrow of time on the universe. Like if you imagine every event that ever happens in your life or the universe or whatever is written down on a series of cards, then the second law of thermodynamics is the thing that figures out what order the cards go in. So that's a brain bender, isn't it? And it's why you shouldn't obsess about shit that doesn't matter, because everything's a clock, and one day the alarm bell's going to ring and you're not going to be here anymore. And just before that happens, you'll be gutted that you didn't spend more of your life thinking about chicks in bikinis, dude.